Hello friends, thank you for tuning in, and in this recording I'm going to talk about the Vipassana meditation and my perspective on it, and more specifically my perspective on the 10-day silent Vipassana meditation retreat. And in order to understand my perspective, you need to know what dimensions are. So I'm going to spend a huge chunk of this recording talking about dimensions. Somebody requested me to share my perspective on the Vipassana meditation. And thank you so much for the request, because it makes me motivated to actually record something, but also gave me the opportunity to include the explanation on dimensions. Because essentially when you go into deep meditation and when you enter hypnosis with the intention of integrating yourself, ascending your consciousness, and doing shadow work, you are navigating dimensions. What is a dimension? So a dimension can also be known as a density. It's a level of vibration. And the dimension you are in, the level of vibration that you are in, determines your experience of reality. My explanation on dimensions is based on a summarization of all the explanations that I've ever heard from all the spiritual teachers that I've ever followed and still follow, as well as my personal experience doing one-on-one hypnosis sessions with clients. Because essentially what I'm doing with clients is that I'm guiding them through dimensions for them to be able to do their healing work. And it's important for me to kind of be able to gauge where they are in the process and what level of dimension they are experiencing an event in. So before I go into giving you a little mind map of how you can visualize the dimensions, I want to say that on an experiential level, all the dimensions are here right now. Navigating dimensions is kind of like swiping through filters, and you can choose which filter you want to experience reality in. So the best visual that I've come across on explaining dimensions is the musical scale. The dimensions are very similar to a musical scale, because a musical scale needs the entire octave to create a musical piece. So the potential of all the frequencies, all the vibrations exist there now. And tapping into a certain note is like tapping into a specific dimension. So the first and the second dimension are lower toned, lower vibration, slower. And usually these dimensions are experienced as experiencing very primal elemental energies. Like you feel the elemental energy of a rock. And we are all in the third dimension, physical form. And then above us is the fourth dimension and the fifth dimension. And the fourth and fifth dimension is what are known as the astrals. The fourth is the lower astral, and the fifth is the higher astral. Now the astrals are the dimension of the mind, imagination, dream, and the subconscious as well. They act as a bridge between the physical world and the spiritual worlds. In the astrals, form still exists, except it's not material, it's not physical. It's a slightly less dense vibration. The lower astrals, form is still very much there. So in the lower astrals, you still experience separation. So an example of this would be if you dreamed you were walking on a path in the mountain and suddenly you encountered a wolf and an eagle, and they came up to you and told you something. That's very much a fourth dimension experience. But then if you would, as you were talking to this dream wolf and dream eagle, realize that they were your spirit guides or an aspect of your own psyche, that would be a fifth dimension. experience. Because in the fifth dimension, though you still experience form and separation, you also experience unity and connection. So you feel connected to everything that you encounter. And through that connection, you have a deeper understanding. It's like a beautiful balance between individuality and unity. Now, the fifth dimension is also known as the heart dimension. It's the intelligence of the heart is the intelligence that unifies opposites. Dimensions really don't have a clear border. Their borders are gradient. They merge into each other. Now, after the fifth dimension comes the sixth dimension. And in the sixth dimension, form ceases to exist. So separation ceases to exist. And so usually the sixth dimension is experienced as energy. And then you can go up to the seventh and eighth, and the higher you go, the higher the vibration, the more unity you feel, and it goes on to eternity. And many of these beautiful healing energies, God consciousness, Christ consciousness, come from the 12th dimension. It's also important to know that there are dimensions within dimensions. So within the 12th dimension, there are many dimensions. But all of them will have the same quality of unity. And as I've said earlier, all the dimensions exist now. So the same event happens in all the dimensions. And you can choose to perceive an event through a certain dimension, through the perspective of a dimension. And it gives you a completely different experience. It doesn't change the event, but it changes the experience. So now let's go into how to navigate the dimensions. Well, the way you navigate dimensions is the way you navigate anything energetically, which is the law of attraction. The energy that you embody determines where you go, determines which density you bring yourself into. So since the fourth dimension, the astral, is slightly higher than 3D, than physical matter, the reaction to the energy, or the reflection to the energy that you are resonating, happens more instantly. On the earth plane, the physical plane, it might take some time because matter is slow, but in the astrals, it's almost like a direct mirror. So if you go into the astrals, so if you shift into that more subtle vibration of your mind, of your subconscious, of your dream, you will immediately see the energy that you are holding reflected back to you. You will experience it. But for people who are actually subconsciously holding on to a trauma, an unprocessed emotion, fear, it's very likely that the second that they tap into the astrals, they will experience that trauma. They will see that fear reflected right back at them, which is why a lot of people are afraid to look into their subconscious. It's like saying you're too afraid to look in your closet. Not seeing what's in your closet doesn't mean that there's nothing in it, right? In hypnotherapy, when somebody slips into the astrals and has a sudden re-experiencing of a trauma, we call it an abreaction. It's almost like an emotion that was suppressed for so long suddenly takes over completely. Now, it's important to know that re-experiencing a trauma without the ability to integrate it strengthens the trauma. It compounds the trauma. And this is actually something they use in mind control techniques and in dark rituals. They create a trauma in a victim, and later on they create the circumstances, or they trigger the victim to relive that first trauma. And so the trauma is compounded again and again and again, and this fractures the mind. So there are different ways to integrate an ab reaction. There are different ways to integrate your shadow, which is the trauma or the unprocessed stuff that you see reflected to you in your astrals. One is the understanding of what is going on, understanding that it is simply a reflection of what is in your own energy field. It's not really real in the moment. You can either do this on your own, or you can have a therapist beside you who is knowledgeable about this, that can guide you step by step into the integration. Now, another thing that can happen when you go into an ab reaction and you don't integrate it is that you start to desensitize yourself. So in a way, you dissociate your mind. You create this indifference. And this is essentially what dark mind control techniques are designed to do as well. To recreate the trauma again and again, fracture the mind, and desensitize it from emotion. There is also another way to integrate a trauma or a shadow, and that is to skip the fourth astral completely and go right into the higher astral. And from the higher astral, from a bird's eye view, look down into the experience that needs to be processed. Entering the astrals into the fifth eye astrals automatically gives you the energetic ability to integrate a trauma, an unprocessed emotion, a shadow. And this is a much gentler way. It really depends on the person what method is best. It also really depends on the situation what method is best. And also it really depends on what the person themselves believe. If you believe that you have to face your fears head on and relive the gunk, then that's what you have to do. But if you believe that your heart has the power to integrate through love, then that's what's going to happen, right? So what you choose to believe creates your experience. If you are somebody who avoids discomfort at all costs, you might be using avoiding the discomfort and going into the higher perspective as a way to not fully deal with your crap, basically. Both ways, you need to embrace the experience completely. But one way is kind of like being pushed into the deep end, and the other way from the higher perspective is really being open and embodying the heart. Because that's the thing, right? How do you bypass the fourth dimension? If you feel all broken, if you feel all drained, how do you go into the higher astrals without having to immediately have your crap reflected towards you? And the answer is you activate the heart. You activate the heart energy, heart coherence. It balances out your entire energy field, and you go into the fifth dimension, the fifth astral. So in my personal practice, I am an Anahata yogi, so I believe that the heart can heal everything, and that's the method that I use. So when clients come to me, the first session is really all about creating that energetic foundation. Because if that energetic foundation of heart coherence is there, then I know that the client can integrate whatever they come across or experience, not only in the private session, but after the session as well. I know that they're energetically safe. For certain people, that the entire session is just about getting into the heart. And sometimes that takes 2 hours for people because they're so conditioned to ignore the heart, or there's a lot of integrating that needs to happen before the heart can be accessed. And once I know that foundation is there, then I know that all the other beautiful hypnotherapy techniques out there work so much better. So I hope that was clear. Now we can move on to the Vipassana meditation. The only time I've ever done it was this 10-day retreat, silent retreat in Indonesia, in Bali. And I did it right before I did my first yoga teacher training. And I'm very happy that I did a teacher training right after it, because the 10-day retreat is designed to brainwash you. It's brainwashing 101, you know? So be aware that that's what they're going to do to your mind. But maybe this brainwashing is helpful to you. Maybe you're somebody who is addicted, not necessarily to drugs, but just to a lot of the distraction that we have in the Western culture and Western lifestyle, and kind of this brainwashing and stripping away of the mind into this focus, spiritual inner focus, might be very helpful. So Vipassana is a technique, a meditation technique that is very popular in the Buddhist traditions. Now the one that is the most popular is the one by Swami Goenka. Is he a Swami? I don't know. And he's the one that instigated this donation-based silent retreats worldwide. Now if I remember correctly, the first few days you're supposed to sit and meditate and only focus your attention on the sensations of the upper lip. And then towards the end of the week, you are taught the entire meditation, which is just a body scan. Left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right, or right, left, I can't remember. And this creates an incredible, amazing focus. Not only your mind, but your ability to feel subtle sensations. And the idea is that your body stores samskaras in itself. And samskaras are energetic imprints before thought, before an emotion, before a memory. By scanning your body with this focus, with this complete presence, unwavering presence, without the need to distract, escape, and run away, releases the samskaras. Now during the retreat, you're not allowed to look anybody in the eye. You're not allowed to practice any other technique, which makes sense because you might use certain techniques, especially energy techniques, to mask discomfort. And Vipassana is very much about being present, unwaveringly present with everything as it is. And also throughout the week, you get served less and less food. You get asked to wake up really early in the morning before you usually do. And so your mind is very suggestible when you wake up so early at a time that you're not usually used to. And also, I remember they show a video of Goenka telling you, I want to say all this indoctrination, and it is really kind of indoctrination. I can't exactly remember what he says. Some of it is very lovely, compassionate Buddhist sayings, but a lot of it is also just a false history. So take it with a grain of salt. And I also met people who did the retreat quite a few times, and also like the 30 or 40 day one. And these people are very scary to talk to, you know. So I know for me, at the end of the 10 days, I had mixed feelings about it, because one, I was very sensitive and open, and I remember leaving the retreat and sound vibration I could feel in my body, and some sounds actually cut through me as if it was a dagger. That's how sensitive I'd become after the 10-day retreat. So if you do decide to do the retreat, definitely book a few days after it to reintegrate into normal society. It also gave me this inner resilience, this inner strength, because not only had I managed to do the 10-day silent retreat, which is quite challenging, I felt how strong and powerful my determination was and had become. At the retreat, they ask you to continue doing the meditation 2 hours a day, and I did manage to do that until I did the yoga course. That I learned Anahata yoga techniques, which just blew my mind way more than the Vipassana technique did. So, with the understanding of dimensions, Vipassana does not give you the energetic foundation to go into the fifth astrals and integrate your unprocessed emotions from a higher perspective or from a heart perspective. So even though I didn't experience it myself, there were a few people in the group that were having ab reactions, and nobody there was trained on how to deal with this. And also, the people couldn't communicate with each other. I hear it a lot from other people who have gone to these 10-day retreats that say or describe people having ab reactions, and nobody there is really on board to understand energetically what is going on. It's not enough to have the ab reaction. It's not enough to re-experience the suppressed emotion. You have to know how to integrate it as well. And either the person themselves has to know and understand, or there has to be somebody there who has the proper understanding. So that pretty much summarizes my perspective on it, or my perspective on it. And it's really up to the individual whether or not it's an experience or a technique that is suitable for the person and their condition. In the Anahata yoga tradition, we just have a very simple nidra where you lie down on your back and do a body scan. And this is much gentler on the physical body. Because that's also another thing of the Vipassana, is that sitting for hours at a time, you're really hurting your body and you're not allowed to move. You have to stay present with the pain. And this is a no-no from a yoga perspective. That's really not necessary unless you want that challenge. But we live in a world where everybody is already so harsh to themselves and unkind to themselves, and it doesn't make you a more spiritual person to be able to sit through pain for hours at a time. And so this got me to question another thing. So I asked myself at some point, why did this Goenka, what was his intention for creating these retreats? Now, one could be good karma. Buddhists believe in karma. He wanted to serve his people, so he created this possibility for people to practice spirituality without this financial hurdle. It's just easily accessible to everybody. Another reason could be control, because religion and spirituality are used to control people. And they're used to control people, how? Through the astrals, through their subconscious, through their unconscious mind, which is actually 90% of who they are. I asked myself, and you can ask yourself as well, what kind of mindset does this type of meditation create? Well, it creates a very focused and disciplined person. It also creates almost like a military-like mindset. So somebody who can sit through their task no matter the discomfort, no matter the pain that they're feeling. Whether it's physical pain or emotional pain, they sit through their task unwaveringly. This could be a good thing, but on the other hand, it could also be a very dehumanizing thing. Maybe somebody could look into this, whether this Goenka guy had ties to people in high places. I think he was from Sri Lanka, or whether he had ties to people who were in the military. I know in one of his videos he mentioned that somebody in the military really enjoyed this type of meditation, and I'm not surprised. Why? I hope that gave you a broad picture of how the meditation works. Not only on a psychological level, but on a spiritual level, and maybe even on an ethical level. I actually think that the Vipassana retreat itself would be perfect if they integrated the heart. If they said, first, unconditionally open the heart, and through the heart, unconditionally embrace everything that happens as you scan the body. And instigating that heart adds that beautiful filter into the fifth dimension. For me, that's the most efficient process of integrating shadow, trauma, unprocessed emotion. So thank you so much if you made it through all that. More requests welcome. Many blessings.